Hi Crafty Babes! Today we are making sunglasses cases, and not just any sunglasses case. I've worked really hard on this design. Several people have asked for easy, quick makes, and sunglasses cases that don't have the snap, the plastic snaps that we use for like AirPods cases and stuff. And so I made one with a closure that does not use a snap. It doesn't use the metal hardware hinge. It uses a magnet. For your materials, you're going to need an 8.5 by 8.5 exterior and a matching 8.5 by 8.5 liner piece. And then you're going to need an 8 by 8 piece foam. This is Pellin Flex Foam. You can use Pellin or By Annie's foam. You can even use cotton batting or fusible fleece, but I recommend foam as this is going to be for a sunglasses case. Quilt clips, 2 scrap squares of lightweight interfacing. This really needs to be the thinnest lightweight that you have. I do not recommend medium weight if that is all you have. It really needs to be lightweight and not medium weight, because if you use medium weight, that's probably going to be too thick for our magnets. And you do need some magnets. I'm going to talk more about the magnet sizing in just a moment. Marking pen or marking chalk, scissors, and a ruler. And as for the magnets, I need to explain a few things so that you don't waste your money or get confused while you're magnet shopping like I did, because the magnets are in millimeters when you're shopping on Amazon. So the ones that I'm going to use today are a 6 by 2 millimeter. And what that means is the 6 is like, they're so jumpy. 6 means the diameter of the circle, like how big the circle is. The 2 is the thickness of it. You do not want to get less than a 2 millimeter because it's not going to be strong enough. For example, these are the magnets that I use for my magnetic bookmarks, and they're really thin on purpose because a magnetic bookmark, it's just paper. This is a 1 millimeter. This is an 8 by 1 millimeter size, and this 1 millimeter is not going to be strong enough for what we need in our sunglasses case today. And I know that because I tried it, but I do like the 8 millimeter size. So I'm going to link the 6 by 2 below, but I'm also going to find the 8 by 2 and link that down below for you as well, because if I were to reorder these, I would try to find this 8 by 2 size instead. When we get to like the quilting part, you might decide that you want the 6 by 2, and I'll go through exactly like all my tricks to kind of quilt around the magnets, and then you can decide for yourself if you want the 6 by 2 or the 8 by 2. Also, if you're like, well, I want to get a thicker magnet just to make sure it's like super duper strong because I don't have lightweight interfacing or whatever. I don't know what millimeter this is, but it is significantly thicker than a 2 millimeter. It might even be like an 8 or a 10. This is from a refrigerator magnet that I broke off when I was just kind of messing around with things, but this is going to be too bulky. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping for magnets, that the higher millimeter thickness that you buy, it's going to be bulkier when you sew it in, and it might not be the best option. We're going to start with our piece of foam that's 8 inches wide, and we're going to mark the middle, which is 4 inches, and that's just to help us mark these other edges. So you're going to mark the center on either edge of the main center. So that's 2 inches in on this side and 2 inches in on this side. Then grab your ruler, and I just put the top edge of this foam, like I just pick a line on my cutting mat and just line it up, and that's going to help me find 3/4 of an inch down from this top edge. And I'm going to mark where those center lines are. I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch down right here and right here. And these are going to be where we put our magnets. Those do not look even. Let me check that one more time. This is one of those steps that needs to be very, very precise, because ultimately we're going to be folding this in half, and we want those magnets to line up perfectly. So you really need to make sure that these are perfectly symmetrical, just as I've shown you. So take this, your magnets, and your 2 scrap interfacing pieces to your sewing machine. So take one of your magnets and grab a pen. I know we're not supposed to use pens. Pencil is not going to work really, really well for this, but it's going to be okay, I promise. So you're going to place the magnet with the edge right above the mark that you made. So not like on it, just above it, just above it, just like that. And I recommend not doing this on your needle plate because they will jump onto your needle plate. And then take your interfacing and just place it over top and hold it in place. And we're going to draw like a little circle around where it's supposed to go, like the line right above the line where I want it to go. And then I'm going to hold it there with my finger to hold it in place, because once I move it onto the needle plate, it's going to want to jump. If you are using, well, this is jumping too. If you are using cotton batting or fusible fleece, it's going to grip from the underside. If you're using foam, it might a little bit, depending on your machine. I'm going to hold it in place. I've got the very edge of the magnet right under my nail right there, and I'm just holding it in place. We're going to stitch a square around where the circle of our magnet is. Okay, and if the interfacing bunches, that's fine. And if you're new to sewing, just watch this before you do it. We do not ever want to get our needle anywhere near sewing over metal, because that's going to break your needle. It could jam up your machine. But when I lower my presser foot, I am safely away from where the needle is. But I'm going to keep my nail right here. I know that might make you nervous that it's really, really close, but it's going to be fine. I promise. Just watch. Not moving my finger. Just kind of twisting as I go. Now it did shift just a little bit, so I'm just going to grab it with my nail and hold it back. And there we go. This is ugly. Don't worry about that. Nobody's going to see that. Nobody's going to feel that. And we're going to trim it when we get to the next step. So we're going to repeat that for the other side. Another tip, if for some reason, even though you placed it like directly center of your mark here above that line, even though you did that on this side, if you feel that it is like off center a little bit by like 1/4 of an inch or so, just match that measurement on this side. It's okay if it's not like perfectly centered. It's more important for the magnets to be evenly placed on either side. So for example, if this magnet was like over here by the time you sewed it in, then that, oh, see, then that's where you need to sew this one. I made my interfacing squares a little bit bigger just so I could like hold it with my fingers, but we can trim some of that off now just a little bit. It really, you can trim it off or leave it, like it doesn't matter. I'm just going to trim it down just a little bit. But what I'm not doing is trimming it too close to where we stitched our square. Okay, that's good enough. And we're just going to throw that on the floor. The magnets are going to be on the liner side. So grab your exterior piece, make sure it's nice and iron flat, and turn it over with the wrong side facing you. And we're going to put this with the magnets facing you, because that's the liner side, face down, and it should be centered. Like you should see a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all sides. If you've never sewn with foam before, the 1/4 inch all the way around is to reduce bulk when we go to finish the project. Turn it over and just smooth that out. You can give it a little press if you want to. Now to create the quilt lines, you'll need your ruler and your hair marker or scorer, unless you have a laser light or a quilting bar that you can use. And if you're thinking, how am we going to quilt this without hitting those magnets? Well, grab some of your extra magnets, and we're going to use those. You can literally just drop them, and they're going to drop right where those magnets are that we put on there, and they're going to be like placeholders for your magnets. So they're going to tell you where the magnets are on the other side so you can make your quilt lines around it. You can quilt this however you want. By quilting, we mean we're just going to attach this top piece of fabric to the foam. Because we used a smaller piece of foam to reduce bulk, and we have this extra seam allowance on this side, we have to do some... That was my cat. If you hear stuff in the background, I have cats and it's nighttime, so they're like super active. We have to do some kind of stitching to attach this to the foam. So you can stitch it however you want. I'm gonna do crosshatch. It's my favorite. I have found that 1.5 inch lines does really nicely with where these magnets are. Like I just made this line, and then the next line is gonna be right here on the other side of that magnet. Now you're going to notice that the magnets do catch on your needle plate, but they do move easily as well, so that's really not that big of a deal. So now you can take your placeholder magnets off and put those back in the container. And I just love the texture that the foam creates. There's really like this sunken in, textured appearance and feel that's just really, really nice. So now we're ready for the lining. So grab the lining and we're going to put right sides together. You might notice some shrinkage, like the width of your liner might be just a hair, like 1/8 of an inch wider than your exterior, and that's okay, because whenever you quilt, especially with something like foam, you're going to have a little bit of shrinkage, and that's normal, but I'm going to show you how to get a really snug fit on the lining. And stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across right here. I actually flipped it over to the other side so you can see what we're working with right here. So when I say we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance back stitch, you're really going to be riding that line of where the foam starts and ends. Now if you go onto the foam a little bit, like, that's fine. It's still reducing an incredible amount of bulk. Now open that up and iron that out flat, that seam. Now we're going to fold it in half, and I like to start at the center. Again, see, my lining was a little bit wider after I quilted this, and it's fine. We're not even going to notice it. So we're going to line up these two seams right here first. And I'm going to make sure the raw edges of this exterior are even more so than the lining, because we can fudge with the lining a lot more than the exterior here. And just add a quilt clip, and then I'm going to smooth down the exterior piece first, lining up those edges. Now on this, the fabric is probably going to want to, oh, it is, can you see it? It's like kind of bunched. So I'm going to smooth that out nicely before I add my clip. Now if you can see, my lining is actually not, both raw edges are not touching, because this one side was a little bit wider than my exterior. That's the only reason they're not lining up. So it's not uneven, there's just extra. But you're not even going to notice, and you're not going to see it. I'm going to show you in just a second. So flip it over this way, because we're actually going to start stitching right here. And we need to leave about a 3-inch opening. So you can either mark that or just eyeball it when you get to the machine, either one. And I'm going to show you how to get that snug fit as well. So we're going to start stitching here at our machine. This is the folded edge. Back stitch, stitch down, pivot, and go all the way down to our opening, back stitch, start again here, back stitch, and then finish. Before we start, I also want to show you that my foam and fabric actually did shift during the quilting process. I didn't use like basting spray or anything like that. And it is fusible, but it still shifted a little bit. I have a little bit of seam allowance with the fabric right here, but not a full 1/4 inch. It's okay. That means I'm actually sewing on the foam right now, but that's okay. It's still not going to be as bulky as if we had a full 8.5 piece of foam. Now here, my seam allowance is going to change. If your lining ended up being exactly the same as your exterior and yours was not a little bit too big after quilting, depending on the materials that you're using, this will not apply to you. You just keep with your 1/4 inch seam allowance. But my liner is almost to the 1/2 inch mark already because it's shifted. Now the piece underneath is at a 1/4 inch. You see that? But I can't see that. I'm just at the top side. So I'm going to follow this top line right here at a 1/2 inch. And regardless of whether your liner came out a little bit more or it's still at the 1/4 inch on both sides, either way, you're going to sew down just a little bit. And just like we do with our tote bags, if you have bought the Daisy May tote pattern bag with me, we're going to start angling in just about another 1/4 of an inch and then straighten it out. Back stitch. This is going to help us get a more snug fit. So wherever your seam allowance was up here, again, mine's probably a little bit wider than yours. You're going to do that exact same seam allowance down here. Now before we turn it out, we have to do some snips. Starting on the folded edge of the exterior, we're just going to snip off the very edge right here. It's just a little bit. Here's our seam. You don't want to get too close. And then we're going to snip off this very corner. Here's my seam where my fingernail is. We don't want to get too close because that might cause holes later on. And then we're going to add some other little snippies right here just on either side. This is going to cause that corner to fold out very nicely. And then down here, same thing, snip. I'm just going to go ahead and trim. I don't like all these extra stringies. I'm just going to trim those off. But again, leaving a healthy seam allowance from our seam line. Snip the corner. Snip, snip. Now typically we wouldn't trim any of these sides, but this is kind of like a lot on mine, so I'm just going to trim that off right there. Trim that off. You don't have to do that. I just do. Okay, now put your hand through that opening. And I just grab a side. You can use a turner if you have one. I just stick my fingers in there and poke out the corners. If some stringies made it to the other side, go ahead and snip those. We don't need those. Okay, so now it looks about like this. We're almost finished. It's looking almost finished. Now, because our seam allowance was so healthy on that bag opening, your opening should naturally fold in together. But if it doesn't, take your point. I hold it like this. Take your pointer fingers and just push it in, especially if you ripped your stitches a little bit, which is fine. You can fix that. If you did rip your stitches, the little stitches that are poking right here, just kind of tug them with your nail and trim them off. It's fine. And then you can give this a little press. And if you're batch making these, you can add a clip right here. Otherwise, take this to your machine and just stitch a 1/8 inch seam allowance right here to close that up, and meet me back here. Snip your threads. And then I kind of open it like this with my fingers and push that in. And then you do need some kind of turner or dowel rod or something to push this all the way down in the bag. I'm gonna use my pen, but it's closed. Push this all the way down. Now this one did pretty well, but if for some reason your lining is like doing this, just kind of force it down in there like that. Again, if you're batch making these, like pushing all these liners back in is a good TV activity. You can give it a little press. So you can leave it just like this, or you can add a top stitch like I did right here. I added a 1/8 inch seam allowance top stitch right here. And the way you do that is you put it like this on your machine. It is very, very wiggly because this is such a small circle. So you have to do a section at a time, stop, rotate, and then do another section. I just don't want to do a seam allowance on this one because I think it's really pretty just like that. And the magnet, friends, I hope you really, really enjoyed this, and don't forget, I'm going to link the different size magnets for you down in the description, and I'm also going to link the full sewing tutorial playlist for you. I had so much fun sewing with you today, friends, and I will see you later. Bye.